we know you've had your own issues with mental health as well, and huge ambassador for it. Particularly whenever we talk on this podcast about the pressures. Listen, there's a battle of the out halves in Ireland, a young 21-year-old Sam Prendergast up against 25, 26-year-old Jack Crowley. All week, the media, they're being pitted against each other. Every little minute of their game is being scrutinised from the weekend. You know, in the day of social media, in the days of constant media attention, do you worry about the mental health and the stresses nowadays, particularly and you think of footballers as well, like these are still young kids playing at a massive stage. Like it has to be having an effect on them.
Yeah, well, I think that some of the clubs are getting better at advising players, but a lot of them, let's be frank, just see the players as kind of, they're basically there to be used, as it were. And also don't forget that, we're talking about mental health now. I've got a lot of friends from Burnley back in the day when I was growing up who are former players, and a lot of them are now dead, and a lot of them have died of dementia. And one of my friends, Paul Fletcher, who was a great player for Burnley, and he was saying to me that, if you just sat down with all that team at the time and said, listen, by the way, guys, because of all these wet balls you had in all the time, and you might get a few years taken off your life. He said, pretty much every one of us would still have done it. And likewise, I think with young players today who may be advised about mental health and whatever it might be, I think most of them would still do it. However, I think the clubs and the game has got a responsibility that they're aware of it. And where I feel sorry for players is that if you're like a 15, 16-year-old kid, or actually now in football, it starts at like 6, 7, 8, and you get picked, you get spotted because you're really, really good and your talent develops. And suddenly by the age of 18, you've got newspapers saying they shouldn't be doing this and they shouldn't be doing that because they're role models. When did this happen that because you're good at football or you're good at rugby, you're a role model? You're only a role model in my mind if you choose to be a role model. Now, the clubs and the unions have got to sort of protect you from that. My advice to somebody like the two guys being picked apart there, I would hope that their families and their coaches would basically persuade them just not to give a damn about social media. Yeah. It doesn't do anything for you. My daughter's a comedian and
she's brilliant. Thank God one of you is funny.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but she when she first started out, and you get hecklers and what have you, get used to dealing with those. But when she did her first Edinburgh Festival, now there's an upside to me being her dad because she probably got more reviewed than she would have done, right? And her first show was all about politics. But the downside is there's people there who want to have a go. And I remember this guy in the Times wrote a vicious review about her. It really upset her. Wow. And I said to her, look, why don't care about it. The guy went along wanting to make you feel like you're feeling now. Don't let it. And it's the same on social media. And I've always said to her, and I think this is a good advice for sports people, if your coach thinks you're completely useless, that's a problem. If your parents think you're a terrible son or daughter, that's a problem. If your kids think you're a terrible parent, that's a problem. But apart from that, just ignore it.
Yeah. About the dog, Alastair. Don't forget the dog.
Oh, the dog, but the dog will always love you.
They love you no matter what.
But you're right, Alastair. I was in the dressing room near the end of my career in Ulster, and I'll never forget it. There was young men in that dressing room taking their phones into the toilet at halftime, and they were checking social media to see. They put in their name, and they would see how other people are praising their performance. And
people who know nothing about the game.
Yeah,
it's some guy on a sofa in his mum's, kitchen.
It's easy to say though, but we all know we might get 100 positive comments, but that one negative comment is always the one that sticks in your head. It's easy to try and tell people to not look at it. A question
Tommy, you know whether you played well or you didn't. You know better than they know.
You're not getting away with your bullshit here, Tommy. He's got
you. Listen, I know I've had bad games as well, but listen,
exactly.
You've got the numbers on the back of the papers. You have your friends who'll fill you in on it. They'll tell you exactly how you went. But we all know how well we go. We all know that the only thing that matters is your teammates or your head coach.
Yeah.
But young kids are grown used to their mobile phones and they are going scrolling. And listen, it's
got to
something
educate
that
them. You've got to
they have to
educate them.
deal with it. Like, do you think it's something, because you talk about mental health, whenever we played rugby, there was a lot more talk about mental strength, and that actually, because if you put health on it, people are always going to, like, how's your health? You're always going to say, oh, it's not great. It's always quite a negative way. Where you talk about your strength, it's something that we know if we go to the gym, you have to work on. You know, if you work in the gym, you'll get stronger. If you work in your mental strength, you'll get better at it.
Yeah, but the way I frame it is I talk about having good mental health. You know, so if I feel my mental health is good, that gives me.
But what does that mean? What does
it
mental
means,
health?
What good mental health to me means is waking up in the morning with a sense of wanting to get out of bed, having purpose, not having a pit in your stomach because you're not anxious about it too much. And it's also about, so I'm going to show you something, right? So this is my jam jar, which sits on my desk the whole time, and I travel with it. And this
Good jam that.
Well, la bonne maman.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It's nice. The best in the year. But and this was a woman in Canada who said that the way to think about your mental health is down in the bottom are your genes. That's the sediment. The rest of it's your life, and stuff swills in and out, and most of it you forget, and memories go. But sometimes you can't cope, and when you can't cope, the jam jar explodes, and that's when you're ill. And she said, we all spend our time trying to undo all this. What we should be doing is building on the jam jar, right? So when I think about good mental health, it's the stuff that I'm putting into my jam jar so that it gets bigger and bigger. Relationships, things that I do, meaningful activity, sleep, diet, exercise, my bagpipes, my books, my dog, Burnley Football Club.
Burnley, come on, Burnley.
What was really interesting is that once she'd said this to me and I got it, if you'd have said to me before I met her, how do you look after your mental health? I'd have said, I take antidepressants every day, which I do, and I see a psychiatrist. But now if you say to me, how do you look after mental health? I go through all these things. Yeah. And my psychiatrist and my antidepressants are up here rather than central.
Amazing.
And you take that everywhere with you just to remind you?
Just what happens is when if I feel a plunge coming on, sometimes it doesn't work, but if I feel a plunge coming on, I get my jam jar out. I've got a drawn version of it as well with all the things.
Amazing.
The things in it. So like the first one is FFF, Fiona Family Friends.
Brilliant.
If I'm starting to plunge, I think, right, I need to lean on people. I need to tell Fiona. I need to not be horrible to her, which I can be when I'm depressed.
Yeah.
I need to check in on the kids. I need to maybe think of a friend I've not spoken to for ages. And then I've ticked that. And then I go into meaningful activity, do something.
Wow. Then
I go into exercise. And if I'm so depressed I can't face going out, I just walk up and down the stairs for 20 minutes. Music. I listen. Don't read newspapers. Read a book. Don't listen to the news. Listen to music. These are just things that I've found help me have good mental health when I'm feeling like my mental health is bad.
Amazing, Alastair, because we work in the same world. When you have a tool like that, you know what I mean? Like you've given us there a process, and I think when you logical people like ourselves that see stuff like that, that's a brilliant thing for you to share with us. Thanks.
Well, the other guy, the other guy I met on this through rugby, who I wrote about in my book Winners, is Andy McCann. I don't know if you guys have ever met Andy McCann. He worked with the Welsh rugby team when Wales were really good.
Geez, that's a long time ago now.
They could do with him back at the moment.
Have you a number for him?
Get on to Stephen Jones.
Get Stephen Jones and himself to give Warren a call.
He's in New Zealand now, isn't he?
Yeah.
But so I think that you can. This is why I always look back on the Lions tour with kind of fondness, because if you're in an experience like that, for all the shit that goes on around it and all the shit that was coming my way, I learned a lot from talking to other people.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from in watching Clive and the other coaches, and there were tricky relationships, and you could learn from what they do. And I think above all, what you learn is that, and this is another lesson, another maybe thing that these two young fly halves need to be told. When they're thinking about it in 30 years' time, they're not going to remember something that the Irish Independent wrote about. Yeah. They're not going to remember it. They're going to remember whether they made it and whether they played and whether they won and whether it was great.
Yeah.